Genji and Sombra really are going to be some of the worst DPS in the game going forward if these patch notes turned out to be true. However, given the fact that this has been reported by 𝐒𝐿𝐻 from GG Recon, who stated that these were patch notes provided to him by Overwatch League teams because this is the patch that they're going to play on the playoffs, it is very, very likely that on October 25th, this will go live with the Junkenstein's update, and these changes to the heroes will come through. And in my personal opinion, it doesn't actually solve the problem within the meta right now. Some characters in here actually got a little slap on the wrist, while two other characters got completely guttered. And I have a personal rant in regards to Genji at the end, since I'll save that for the more, dedicated viewers, and we'll just talk about the overall patch notes to begin with. So what are the patch notes? I'm going to display the patch notes on screen right about now. We're going to talk about the two characters that got slight slaps on the wrists, and then two characters that got slapped straight in the face, buried 6 feet under, and made sure that they couldn't crawl back out, even though one of them practically didn't have an impact on the meta as a whole, but just kind of fit into it because the game style favored his existence. Anyways, we're going to save that for the end. First of all, let's talk about Zarya. So as everybody knows, Zarya is currently the best tank in the game by far. It's not even like debatable at this point, right? The dev team know this, and the way they are addressing Zarya's case is that the barrier duration has been reduced from 2.5 to 2 seconds, and her barrier cooldown has been increased from 10 to 11 seconds. So I'm going to keep it real with you guys, right? This, in my opinion, is a little slap on the wrist for Zarya, because that cooldown increase and the barrier reduction, while yes, they are, they'll be prominent in some niche matchups, and for the barrier cooldown thing, in longer team fights, it's going to feel worse for Zarya, and it might even allow a Winston-based comp to start feeling better. The problem here is that, again, like, the overall flow for Zarya to just stay and exist and sustain herself within a fight is still way too good. Personally, what I would have done is that if Zarya uses a self-bubble, then, like, after that self-bubble, she has to wait about 2 seconds before she can use one for herself again. Because the fact that she can still use 2 different bubbles for herself, that's still 4 seconds of immortality. Like, granted that, she would then need to wait 22 seconds to get both the bubbles back, but those 4 seconds of where she's, to a certain extent, immortal, and she's got 2 supports behind her keeping her up, and she's getting charged up, and she's bursting people down, that's so much for one character that it just works out so well in her favor. And again, because she's a beam-based character and she's really good at pressuring down targets, it makes it very difficult for characters to effectively duel her. And she's also got for a tank, she's also got a pretty decently, slim hitbox, so it's very easy to strafe around with her and also dodge certain shots and everything. So any good skilled Zarya player looking at patch notes like this, I've been playing Zarya in ranked. I'm already like Masters 1 with her. I'm about to reach GM with her again. So for me, I look at this and I think, all right, so what? Like, it's barely noticeable. Like, it's like, sure, like I said, in niche interactions, it might be felt, but I don't think it's enough to push Zarya out of the meta. Because, in my opinion, the problem with Overwatch 2 is balancing right now is that they keep thinking that they have to nerf everything into the ground or try to just nerf things one by one, rather than bring other characters up to pace with something that's strong at the moment. But, let's see. The next character is D.Va, and D.Va's fusion cannon spread has been increased from 3.5 to 3.75, and then the booster impact damage has been dropped down from 25 to 15. So, I know something that wasn't mentioned, that was mentioned in the previous patch notes was that, basically, D.Va got more armor onto her HP bar and a little bit more HP. And, the defense matrix has become, like, pretty good right now, right? So, in this case, like, D.Va's ability to be really, really tanky has been maintained, but her ability to do some burst damage has been kind of taken away from her. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but I don't think D.Va's strength really came from her ability to burst down targets. I think her ability that makes her really, really strong right now is just her ability to just stay alive for what could sometimes feel like it just feels like sometimes she just doesn't die. And, if a good D.Va player can manage her defense matrix really well and position herself accordingly and then punish targets like one by one, as you guys saw in my D.Va guide video, I don't know if this was the area that we wanted to nerf D.Va. Like, this is the weird thing. Blizzard said that in Overwatch 2, they wanted to give characters more agency to be able to win their duels, But now one by one, they're removing each character's agency to duel. And they're nerfing parts of the kits that allow them to have an advantage or something within these duels, right? Now, granted that for some characters it's actually needed. So in Zarya's case, her barriers are really, really good in duels and isolating targets and just, completely bullying someone into the ground, right? So granted that in a situation like that, it's needed. Even like, for example, like Sombra's case, right? Well, I do think that the nerfs to Sombra are a little bit too much. He did deserve some nerfs too, right? But I think there's supposed to be a limit of where we say that, okay, we can maintain power here and then reduce power somewhere else. Because here's the thing, right? If they're gonna take away D.Va's ability to duel, she'll basically just be a defense matrix bot. And that is such a boring way to play her. And again, that means the margin of error for D.Va is that if you have even a slightly aggressive D.Va player who's unable to get kills, unable to farm bomb properly, or just constantly out of position, and with these changes to booster impact and the cannon spread, it's just going to lead to the fact that that guy's just going to be demeched all the time, especially since Zarya didn't really get any damage nerfs either, which is, again, weird, right? So, irregardless though, for both Zarya and D.Va's case, I don't think it's too crazy of a nerf like the way Genji and Sombra got them. Like, it'll definitely be felt, but it's more of a little slap on the wrist, and it basically just tells Zarya and D.Va players to be just a little bit more careful, because before they were getting a bit too cheeky, but now it's just basically telling them, hey, well, just be a little bit more careful because the opportunity to punish you is a lot higher now. Now, moving on to the icing of the cake, Sombra, and then we'll talk about Genji at the end because I have a big rant in regarding to this. So in Sombra's case, Sombra is actually pretty oppressive across all ranks right now. The entire Overwatch forums is filled with Sombra, and some of the characters here and there. But in Sombra's case, in my personal opinion, before we talk about her changes, what makes her really, really strong is her ability to be able to hack from invis. And in my opinion, they can take that away and keep some power in her hack ability, because they can always use the argument that Sombra has to expose herself to hack you. And again, this approach that they took down this route has completely murdered Sombra's duel potential. She already got a damage reduction to her little weapon because of the rework. And as you can see over here, here's the patch notes now, editing magic. Her hack damage multiplier has been reduced from 40 to 25%. This is very, very bad, because Sombra is basically not shooting you with bullets. She's shooting you with those little soft Nerf toys. It touches you, it doesn't really hurt, it just kind of tickles, and you're like, really, that's it? What is this? She's being reduced to some EMP bot again, like she was in Overwatch 1, and that style of play for her is ridiculously boring, even though they've said they want her to be this stealth assassin character who can kind of harass your backline and everything. So they achieved that. It was a bit too much. But then they just completely murdered her damage potential. But all right, fair enough. Maybe she was a bit too strong in that regard. But the rest of the changes to Sombra, I feel, are perfectly justified. So hack ability lockout duration reduced from 1.75 to 1.5. This is fine. Again, it's still pretty much the same thing, but that extra few seconds is, it's all right. It's one of those things where it's you have to feel it to believe it. And then hacked enemies are no longer valid targets for hacking for the duration of the effect. This is actually a really, really good nerf, because Sombras could completely isolate one target and just keep perma-hacking them over and over and over again, which is very, very toxic and very, very frustrating, especially if you're a tank player. So when I've been in the process of climbing with Zarya, I've been isolated by Sombra, and when you don't have your bubbles and she's kind of going away hacking on you, it is pretty frustrating, and it can get very, very tilting as well. So these Sombra changes are justified. I think taking away damage from a character in a game where healing is out of control right now and we're not talking about it is not the way to go. And this brings me to Genji as well. So this is where I'm going to rant, guys. If anybody who's not interested or passionate about Genji as a character, this is where you can leave. This is where I get a little bit more passionate. This is where the video gets drawn out. If you stay and you hear me out, then I really, really appreciate it. So in Genji's case, they actually talked about this in the dev blog, where they said that they completely understand that the reason Genji is powerful right now, or a bit more powerful than he should be, is because of the fact, again, get this, because of the fact that the new DPS passive is pushing him beyond some boundaries, and what they are going to do is that they are going to adjust the way that the DPS passive works so that it doesn't benefit characters like Genji and other flankers too much, right? They themselves said that on the dev blog post. The problem is that now that we're actually getting the patch notes, they not only reduced his maximum ammo from 30 to 24, they also reduced the shuriken damage to the lowest it's ever been. So if you guys didn't know, when Genji first started out, he had 28 shuriken damage. It then got buffed to 30 the first time he got his big set of giga buffs, and then it dropped down to 29, and that was a good sweet spot. And then he also had like his spread decreased, and he got a fire rate increase because he was very clunky. So in that regard, these are the changes that were made to Genji, right? So the shuriken damage being pushed all the way down to 27, he doesn't have any combos anymore. His burst potential has been fully removed. I actually don't know what to say. Like they could have nerfed the fire rate. They could have slowed down the fire rate so he feels a lot more clunky, and it then separates like good and bad Genji players, because the good ones will understand how to pace themselves accordingly, and bad ones will just feel weird all the time. And I just don't get it. And the rant that I have for this is that what was even the point of making a dev blog that says we completely understand that it's because of the DPS passive, so we're going to adjust the DPS passive, and then you come out with these patch notes and you completely murder the hero to the weakest state that he could ever be in. And, you know, guys, like, let me talk about this for a second, right? This is, like, not only is this literally the lowest his damage has ever been, his interactions with the breakpoints within the game, it's going to screw over so many of his duels. So many combos where you should be winning the duel or something will be screwed over, and he's going to be unable to do anything properly. He's not even an like this backline assassin that they wanted him to be, or this expert duelist that they've always talked about, that, oh yeah, well, Genji's a duelist hero, and he's supposed to kind of like lock somebody into a 1v1 and win it. This is not how you do that. And given how high healing has become, immortality buttons are becoming a new norm in Overwatch, this is ruthlessly murdered Genji. Like, what's his purpose now? And not to mention the fact that this makes building Blade even harder, but because your damage numbers are a lot lower, to meet that requirement of the ult charge, it's going to take a lot more time for you to reach that full number and charge up the ult. And remember, Genji has to hit 3 different projectiles. 3 different projectiles, and this can only happen at point blank range to get the maximum value from his DPS output. Otherwise, you're probably hitting like 1 or 2 projectiles, and that's nothing for this character, right? So building Blade has become even harder. And if you're playing Genji like more safe and passive on let's say if they're playing like a more like poke comp, they got a really good Widow or Sojourn, or you're playing on defense, this allows for even like the most average support player to easily catch up with like building defense ultimates like Sound Barrier or Transcendence, you know, just in time to counter the only time Genji becomes relevant, which is Dragon Blade, or even anticipate, or just like anticipate the fact that, hey guys, we haven't really seen Dragon Blade in 1 hour now. I think it's coming up in these team fights, so let's start saving some cooldowns. So the moment he comes in, we'll just like bulldoze him, run him over, and then, you know, like his team's gonna flame him for throwing. And like I said, there were so many ways to go about it, about kind of slowing his pace down or whatever. But first of all they could have done was adjusted the way the DPS passive worked, or an argument that me and a lot of other people within the content creator community are making is that the DPS don't actually need a passive, and it's okay if they don't have it either. And I don't know, like there's no denying that Genji was a good pick, but Genji was a good pick because of the way the game is being played, not because he himself is causing the meta. Like I said, they could adjust the fire rate so he feels more clunky. They could increase the spread on his weapon so the shurikens aren't hitting as often, and it only rewards like the best Genji players. You could just reduce the mag size alone, and that could reduce his overall like sustained damage. Like any combination of these could have worked, but like going after his combo potential is actually really, really silly. And again, they're not coming out and talking about the fact that like why they're going after the combos, because like on one hand people believe that it's because of Nanoblade, but they themselves in the dev blog post said that, well, we know Genji is pretty strong and it's probably because of the DPS passive. And again, there was no approach to the DPS passive. And I don't know, man, like they've been doing this with every DPS that becomes viable, and they never choose to target the actual like meta characters that roam for free. Like, for example, on this patch, Sojourn is the current culprit of who is really, really strong right now. And she has not received any nerfs whatsoever. So my question for the development team is, where's the Sojourn nerf? Why does she get to escape for free? She's dominating high-level play right now. I've already gotten to GM5 or GM4, I don't remember, on one of my accounts. And literally from like high diamond, low masters, you get swarmed by these Sojourn players who are so good at finding value with her railgun shot, and it just becomes like the lobby just turns into an experience of who has the better Sojourn. And it's extremely oppressive. And one of the good things was that Genji could kind of keep Sojourn in check simply because, you know, he could lock her into a close range duel, and that's obviously something that she doesn't like. But now he's gone, and Sojourn gets to roam even more freely now. And in my personal opinion, I think we're going to be going into a meta where it's just all about snipers. I think Sojourn, Ashe, Widowmaker, and Hanzo are going to be the best DPS going forward, simply because there's nothing to kind of put pressure on poke. I don't know. Like, we'll have to see how the meta evolves going forward. I just think the treatment that Genji has gotten was extremely unnecessary. There were better ways to balance this character, as I've suggested. And this character has never been the reason for why a meta is the way it is. He's always been a byproduct. It's just, you know, if the game goes down a certain direction, Genji just kind of pokes his head in, realizes that he can actually play the game now. He starts playing the game, the development team sees that, oh, you know, Genji's back. All right, well, just gutter him, get rid of him, throw him into the trash. And then they just kind of sit there and they scratch their heads like, wait, wasn't Genji the reason for the meta? We just nerfed him. Why isn't he gone? I don't know, guys. Like, I'm very upset right now. This is, in my opinion, this is the worst patch that Overwatch could have ever done. They have always been talking about that in Overwatch 2, they wanted to reward players for their skill. They wanted players to have more agency. And it seems like any time a character is given agency, the ability to kind of take the game in their own hands and kind of turn it around, they just completely strip that character. Rather than taking power from one part of the kit and putting it into another like they were doing before, now they just completely strip them of power and then leave them to rot. A great example is how they dealt with Soldier 76 after his first patch where he was like a meta character in the Overwatch League. Another example is like how horrible Tracer feels, in my opinion, in Overwatch 2 in a solo queue environment where, again, just healing has become so high. And this is what baffles me the most. We will literally go down a route where we'll just go back to some goats-based comps again because healing is so high. Tanks being able to stay alive is like so easy because they have like so many different ways to do that now, that what's the point of the damage roll again? I don't know. I'm still recovering from COVID. I'm still a bit sick, so I probably just went on like a big rant in regards to everything. But I would love to hear your guys' opinions down below. What do you think? Do you agree with these changes? And yeah, just share your thoughts with me. As always, you can hit the subscribe and like buttons because they are free ways to support the channel. You don't have to do anything financially. I'll do this type of content for you for free. And since I'm still recovering, videos will still be a little bit slow here and there. But I was excited to kind of sit down and talk to you guys about these patch notes. Now, with that being said, I will see you in the next video.